So when I graduated and I had a job, everything was going great. I was making good money, making decent money, but you don't really know what good money is till you start living a lifestyle. And essentially, I had just enough money to like buy a nice car, stay in a nice apartment, and maybe take a couple of vacations every year. It was good money. But I think for me, what I learned very early in corporate America is that I worked all the time. I didn't know, and in those firms, they bleed you. I was working. So during busy season, you have to put in like, I worked for a middle market firm. So you have to put in like 55 billable hours during busy season. That translates to like 60 to 65 working hours a week. So, kids now think like, oh yeah, I got salary, whatever. I'm working at 8 to 5. Like salary for us meant that we were working 10 hours, 12 hours on average, which, that was what, it was a different economy. There wasn't any like, it wasn't really social media. It wasn't really influencers. It wasn't. So if you wanted a successful lifestyle, it's just what you had to do.
That was the only path.
And I think I did it in my second year, going on my third year, my third busy season. I started to just get uninspired. I started to see, I pay attention a lot to like my surroundings. Like I pride myself on self-awareness and just general awareness, period. And I was noticing that most of the people that I work with weren't happy, especially the people who were like higher ups, executives, the managers. They were working all the time. And when they talked about, they barely even talked about their family. We spent more time at work than they did with their families. And for me, we would work in rooms. I was an auditor, so we'd work in teams.
And a team. This is a corporate team.
It was a corporate team.
A real team?
So a real team. So you'd have all the way from intern to staff, senior staff, and maybe a manager on the team. Teams of 3 to 4. And a lot of times we just get stuck in a room wherever the client thought like this is a space that we don't care about, we don't need, we get stuck in there. So it could be like a conference room with no windows, and we're in this conference room for 3 to 4 weeks. Conference room, no windows, 3 to 4 weeks. You come into work in the morning, you get there at like 7:30. Sometimes, especially in the winter, it's still dark. And then you get off at like 8, 9, 10, it's still dark.
It's tough.
And after doing that for a year or two, it's just like, I started feeling like, man, life is passing me by.
Wow.
I'm like, people have gotten married, people have had babies, people have taken vacations, all this in 24 hours. And all I've been doing is sitting on this computer, writing tick marks and clearing comments or doing whatever I was doing. So I just started getting tired of it. And I always have been the type of person who I like to find meaning in my work. So I think for every person, you become an expert between 2 to 5 years doing the same thing over and over. So I wouldn't say like I was like best auditor in the world or anything, but I pretty much got the hang of what we were doing. I'm like, okay, we're going to come in here, check the files, make sure that the client's not doing anything suspicious or they're abiding by like general accounting principles and all that stuff. But after a while, I just started feeling like, what do I have to look forward to in life, right? Like, okay, another promotion next year, maybe. A raise, maybe, it was cool, but I just started getting real uninspired. And I think that was the first time for me, I started feeling like, but to back that up, you talked about teams.
Yeah.
We would have issues.
Who's your coach?
The coach.
You don't have to use any names, it's all good.
Yeah, but we would work in teams, but there would be issues. And whenever human beings, it's our nature to complain.
Yeah. Exactly.
And sometimes the complaints were BS, sometimes the complaints were valid. But one thing was consistent on every team that I was in. We would all have complaints, the valid complaints, if we park the complaints are like valid and non-valid complaints. And nobody would ever do anything about the complaints. The leader of the team, if someone was being mistreated on the team, would never stand up for the person on the team. I just started seeing all these inconsistencies, and it was kind of like, do as I say, not as I do.
Cool.
And that's kind of like one of the big things I started taking away from corporate, started witnessing. So for me at this point, I had been through like my share of like bullying in high school. I'd gotten over that shit. Yeah. Like I'd play football, like whatever. I had a different mentality. So like in corporate, I never got bullied because I just wouldn't tolerate. And whenever I never would tolerate it. And whenever it was something that I felt was unfair, I would speak up. But I noticed that not only other people wouldn't do the same thing. Other people who were in a position to speak up rarely ever did.
Right.
So that was kind of like what started turning me off. And I was like, I just wasn't a fan of like a lot of cultures that I was in. I've worked at some great places, and not every project that I was on or not every company I've been at had a negative culture. But I would say finding great culture is a rare one. And so that was something that stuck to me and taught me how important culture is, because I learned firsthand at that career that happy people work harder, work smarter.
So if you enjoyed this short segment of the podcast, here's another short segment to watch if you click right here. Or if you want to watch the entire podcast, click over here.